The story of Malaysia begins in the midst of prehistory over 40,000 years ago. The humid jungles of Borneo reveal their first human inhabitants, hunter-gatherers, navigating dense rainforests with remarkable ingenuity. Archaeological discoveries at Naya Caves in Sarawak uncovered a human skull dating back to 40,000 BCE, making it one of Southeast Asia's oldest human remains. These early peoples, the ancestors of Malaysia's indigenous Orang Asli, developed sophisticated knowledge of the rainforest secrets, its medicinal plants, seasonal rhythms, and dangerous predators. For thousands of years, they lived in harmony with one of Earth's most biodiverse environments, leaving behind mysterious cave paintings that hint at complex spiritual beliefs and a deep connection to the natural world. Around 10,000 BCE, as the Ice Age ended and sea levels rose, the geography of Southeast Asia transformed dramatically. Land bridges that once connected what we now call Malaysia to surrounding regions disappeared beneath rising waters. The peninsula and Borneo became increasingly isolated, developing distinct ecological systems and human cultures that would shape the region's development for millennia to come. The true dawn of Malaysian civilization arrived with the Neolithic Revolution. By 2500 BCE, agriculture had taken root in fertile river valleys. Rice cultivation, that revolutionary crop that would transform all of Asia, began to replace hunting and gathering as the primary means of subsistence. With agriculture came permanent settlements, specialized labor, and the first hierarchical societies. Malaysia, as strategic location bridging the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea, placed it squarely at the crossroads of ancient maritime trade. By the 1st century CE, merchant ships from India, China, and the Middle East were navigating the treacherous Strait of Malacca, bringing with them not just exotic goods, but transformative ideas and beliefs. Hindu and Buddhist influences began permeating the Malay Peninsula from the 3rd century onward. The arrival of Indian traders and Brahmin priests introduced Sanskrit writing, administrative systems, and new religions that would fundamentally reshape local cultures. Early coastal settlements grew into key trading hubs, their leaders adopting Indian concepts of kingship and divine authority. These influences crystallized into the first major regional power, the Lanka Suka Kingdom, established around the 2nd century in what is now northern Malaysia. Though archaeological evidence remains limited, Chinese records describe a prosperous civilization with sophisticated administrative systems and a powerful navy that controlled crucial shipping lanes. But it was the rise of the mighty Srivijaya Empire in the 7th century that truly transformed the region. Based in Sumatra, but extending its influence across the Malay Peninsula, Srivijaya wasn't just a political entity, it was a commercial and cultural powerhouse. For nearly 4 centuries, Srivijaya dominated maritime trade between China and India, amassing enormous wealth through control of the Strait of Malacca. Under Srivijaya's shadow, local principalities in Malaysia developed into important commercial centers. Kedah on the western coast emerged as a major entrepot, its ports bustling with merchant ships carrying silk, spices, and precious metals. Buddhist monuments constructed during this period, like the Buyam Valley Temple Complex, reveal sophisticated architectural knowledge and deep religious devotion. As Srivijaya's power waned in the 13th century, the Majapahit Empire of Java extended its influence across the region. Though never fully conquering the Malay Peninsula, Majapahit's cultural impact was profound, spreading Javanese artistic styles, literature, and administrative practices throughout what will become Malaysia. The decline of these ancient thalassocracies created a power vacuum, one that will be filled by what many historians consider Malaysia as greatest pre-colonial civilization, the Malacca Sultanate. Founded around 1400 CE by Parameswara, a prince fleeing political turmoil in Sumatra, Malacca transformed from a modest fishing village into Southeast Asia's most important trading port within decades. The Sultanate's rise coincided with China's maritime expansion under the Ming Dynasty. Admiral Zheng He's massive treasure fleets made multiple visits to Malacca, bringing imperial recognition, military protection, and thousands of Chinese settlers who would permanently alter Malaysia's demographic landscape. But Malacca's true genius lay in its ruler's political acumen. Sultan Muzaffar Shah's conversion to Islam in the 1430s proved transformative, connecting Malacca to powerful Muslim trading networks stretching from Gujarat to the Middle East. Under the rule of Sultan Mansur Shah, the Sultanate reached its zenith, controlling much of the peninsula and eastern Sumatra. Malacca wasn't just a commercial entrepot, it was a true cosmopolitan civilization. Contemporary records describe a bustling port where 84 languages could be heard in its marketplaces. Its administrative system, codified in the Undang-Undang Malacca, demonstrated remarkable sophistication, balancing Islamic principles with local customs. The Sultanate's greatest and most enduring contribution was the spread of Islam throughout the Malay world. Malacca became a center of Islamic learning, attracting scholars from across the Muslim world. Through trade connections, diplomatic relations, and occasionally military conquests, Malaccan rulers spread their faith throughout the peninsula and into the Indonesian archipelago, permanently altering the region's religious landscape. But Malacca's wealth and strategic importance made it an irresistible prize for emerging European powers with global ambitions. In 1511, Portuguese warships under Alfonso de Albuquerque bombarded the city. Despite fierce resistance, Malacca fell, marking the beginning of European colonization in Malaysia and the end of indigenous sovereignty for centuries to come. The Portuguese victory in Malacca sent shockwaves through Southeast Asia. Though they had seized the region's most valuable port, the Portuguese never managed to extend their control beyond the city itself. The surviving Malaccan royal family established a new sultanate at Johor, maintaining Malay political traditions and waging constant warfare against the European invaders. For over a century, Portuguese Malacca served as a crucial link in a global trading empire stretching from Lisbon to Macau. Yet their rule was characterized by religious intolerance and commercial monopoly that alienated many regional traders. Muslim merchants increasingly bypassed Malacca, diminishing the port's former glory. The Dutch, with their superior naval power and commercial organization, seized Malacca in 1641 after a lengthy siege. Unlike the Portuguese, the Dutch East India Company viewed Malacca primarily as a strategic asset rather than a commercial center. Their policy deliberately reduced Malacca's importance to prevent competition with their main base at Batavia. While European powers fought over Malacca, other Malay sultanates flourished. Johor emerged as the peninsula's most powerful state, claiming legitimate succession from Malacca. Further north, Kedah, Perak, and Terengganu developed as important regional powers, each with distinctive cultural traditions yet united by common Malay language and Islamic faith. The real transformation of Malaysia began when the British East India Company established a presence on Penang Island in 1786. Francis Light, a company agent, negotiated with the Sultan of Kedah to create a trading post at what became Georgetown. This modest beginning would eventually expand into British dominion over the entire peninsula. British influence grew steadily through the early 19th century. In 1819, Stamford Raffles founded Singapore, which quickly overshadowed Malacca as the region's commercial hub. The Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824 clearly delineated British and Dutch spheres of influence, with the British controlling the Malay Peninsula and the Dutch dominating the East Indies. Through a combination of diplomacy, manipulation, and occasional military force, British authorities extended their influence over the Malay sultanates. The system of residence British advisors with effective governing power was established in the 1870s, allowing Britain to control the peninsula's vast resources while maintaining a facade of indigenous sovereignty. The late 19th century brought dramatic economic and demographic changes to British Malaya. The Industrial Revolution in Europe created insatiable demand for tin, which was abundant in Malaysian soil. Chinese immigrants flocked to the peninsula to work the mines, fundamentally altering the region's ethnic composition. Even more transformative was the introduction of rubber cultivation in the 1890s. As automobile production boomed in America and Europe, demand for rubber skyrocketed. British planters cleared vast tracts of rainforest for rubber plantations, worked predominantly by Tamil laborers brought from southern India. Within decades, Malaya became the world's largest producer of both tin and rubber, generating enormous wealth that flowed primarily to European corporations. This economic revolution created a society sharply divided along ethnic lines. Malays remained largely in traditional agricultural villages. Chinese dominated commerce and mining, Indians worked the plantations, and Europeans controlled the government and major industries. This segregation, encouraged by British divide and rule policies, would have profound consequences for Malaysia's future development. Not all accepted British domination passively. Sporadic resistance continued throughout the colonial period, with figures like Mat Salleh in Sabah and Tok, Jangan in Kelantan leading armed rebellions against colonial authority. Though these uprisings were ruthlessly suppressed, they kept alive the flame of independence that would reignite in the 20th century. By the 1930s, new forms of resistance emerged. Educated in British and Islamic schools, a new generation of Malay intellectuals began questioning colonial rule. Organizations like the Young Malay Union advocated for educational reform and greater Malay participation in government. Meanwhile, Chinese and Indian immigrants, many now second or third generation residents, began developing their own distinctive Malaysian identities. The Japanese invasion of Malaya in December 1941 shattered the myth of Western invincibility. Despite numerical superiority, British forces were outmaneuvered by Japanese troops, who moved swiftly down the peninsula on bicycles through terrain deemed impenetrable by colonial strategists. Singapore, Britain's supposedly impregnable fortress, fell on February 15, 1942, the most devastating defeat in British military history. The Japanese occupation, lasting 3.5 years, was a period of immense suffering. Food shortages became endemic and thousands died from malnutrition and disease. The Japanese military police, the dreaded Kempeitai, established a reign of terror, targeting anyone suspected of resistance. Different ethnic communities experienced occupation differently. Many Malays were recruited into Japanese-sponsored administrative bodies, gaining valuable governmental experience. Chinese Malayans faced particular brutality due to Japan's ongoing war with China. The notorious Sukching massacre saw thousands of Chinese civilians systematically executed in Singapore and major Malayan cities. The occupation's most significant legacy was its galvanizing effect on nationalism. Japanese propaganda promoting Asia for Asians unintentionally strengthened anti-colonial sentiment. The British failure to protect Malaya destroyed colonial prestige and made independence seem both necessary and inevitable. Resistance movements emerged, most notably the Malayan People's Anti-Japanese Army, a predominantly Chinese guerrilla force supported by British intelligence. Operating from jungle hideouts, these fighters gained valuable military experience and political organization that would prove crucial in the post-war years. When British forces returned in September 1945, they found a fundamentally changed society. The colonial government's attempts to resume pre-war arrangements met increasing resistance. Their proposal for a Malayan Union in 1946, which would have granted equal citizenship to all regardless of ethnicity, provoked fierce opposition from Malay nationalists who feared becoming a minority in their own land. The Malayan Union controversy catalyzed Malay political organization. Under Dato' Onn bin Jafar's leadership, the United Malays National Organization was formed in 1946, successfully forcing the British to abandon the Malayan Union scheme. Its replacement, the Federation of Malaya, preserved the special position of Malays and the sovereignty of traditional rulers. Meanwhile, the Malayan Communist Party, drawing strength from wartime resistance networks and exploiting post-war economic hardship, launched an armed insurgency in 1948. The Emergency, as it was euphemistically called, saw communist guerrillas wage jungle warfare against colonial forces for 12 years. Though the insurgents never came close to victory, the conflict forced British authorities to implement reforms addressing rural poverty and political representation. A crucial breakthrough came with the emergence of Tunku Abdul Rahman as UMNO's leader. Rather than pursuing exclusively Malay nationalism, Tunku formed an alliance with the Malayan Chinese Association and later the Malayan Indian Congress, creating a multi-ethnic coalition capable of presenting a united front to colonial authorities. This alliance party's overwhelming victory in municipal elections demonstrated the viability of inter-ethnic cooperation. Through skillful negotiation, Tunku secured British agreement for Malayan independence, contingent on evidence that the country's different communities could work together peacefully. The resulting Merdeka bargain defined modern Malaysia. Malays received guaranteed political predominance and constitutional protection for their special position, while non-Malays gained citizenship rights and could pursue economic opportunities freely. This compromise, though imperfect, provided enough common ground for independence to proceed. On August 31, 1957, at Kuala Lumpur's Merdeka Stadium, the British flag was lowered for the final time and the new Malayan flag raised. Tunku Abdul Rahman, becoming the nation's first prime minister, proclaimed, "We are finally truly free." The journey to independence was complete, but the challenge of building a unified nation had just begun. The Federation of Malaya achieved independence as a relatively small nation comprising only the peninsula. But a bolder vision soon emerged, the creation of a greater Malaysia incorporating Singapore, Sarawak, and North Borneo. Multiple factors drove this ambitious project. Incorporating Singapore would prevent it from potentially becoming a communist stronghold. The Borneo territories provided valuable resources and strategic depth. For Singapore's leader Lee Kuan Yew, joining Malaysia offered immediate independence from British rule and a larger economic market. Not everyone supported the merger. Indonesia's President Sukarno vehemently opposed what he characterized as neo-colonialism and launched confrontation. The Philippines asserted a historical claim to Sabah. Within the Borneo territories themselves, many feared dominations by Peninsula Malaysians. Despite these objections, Malaysia was officially formed on September 16, 1963, uniting the Peninsula, Singapore, Sarawak, and Sabah into a single federation. The new nation faced immediate challenges, both external and internal. The union with Singapore proved particularly problematic. Tensions between Singapore's predominantly Chinese population and the Malay-dominated federal government escalated rapidly. Disagreements over economic policy and the special position of Malays created an increasingly untenable situation. On August 9, 1965, Malaysia's parliament voted unanimously to expel Singapore from the federation, the only instance in modern history of a country forcing part of itself to become independent. Meanwhile, Indonesian confrontation continued until 1966, when Suharto's new government, more focused on economic development than territorial expansion, signed a peace agreement. Though never escalating into full-scale war, the conflict claimed hundreds of lives and required significant Malaysian and Commonwealth military resources. The first decade of independence was dominated by efforts to create a unified Malaysian identity while balancing the interests of different ethnic communities. Under Tunku Abdul Rahman's leadership, the country achieved remarkable political stability and economic growth, earning him the affectionate title Bapa Kemerdekaan. This delicate balance was shattered on May 13, 1969, following electoral gains by opposition parties that threatened the alliance's two-thirds parliamentary majority. Tensions erupted into Malaysia's worst ethnic violence. Riots in Kuala Lumpur left hundreds dead, primarily Chinese victims of Malay mob violence. The traumatic events forced a fundamental reassessment of Malaysia's national fabric. Parliament was suspended for 2 years as new approaches to the country's ethnic divisions were developed. The result was the new economic policy, an ambitious 20-year plan designed to eradicate poverty regardless of race and restructure society to eliminate the identification of ethnicity with economic function. In practice, the NEP significantly expanded affirmative action for Malays and other indigenous groups. Quotas for university admission, business ownership, and government employment aimed to increase Bumi Putera participation in the modern economy. While successful in creating a substantial Malay middle class, these policies generated resentment among non-Bumi Putera communities who saw them as institutionalized discrimination. The May 13th violence also accelerated leadership transition. Tunku Abdul Rahman stepped down in 1970, replaced by Tunku Abdul Rahman, who implemented more assertive policies promoting Malay interests while maintaining Malaysia's essentially democratic framework. His sudden death in 1976 brought Hussein onto power briefly before the emergence of Malaysia as most consequential modern leader, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. Mahathir's 22-year premiership transformed Malaysia from an agricultural economy into an industrial powerhouse. Inheriting a nation still defined by rubber plantations and tin mines, he embarked on aggressive industrialization, attracting foreign investment while nurturing Malaysian corporations capable of competing globally. The results were remarkable. Malaysia became a leading electronics exporter, developed a national automobile industry with Proton, and created the gleaming new administrative capital of Putrajaya. Massive infrastructure projects, highways, ports, and the iconic Petronas Twin Towers, briefly the world's tallest buildings, symbolized Malaysia's emergence as an Asian tiger economy. Mahathir's Look East policy explicitly rejected Western development models in favor of Japanese and Korean examples, emphasizing strong government guidance of the economy and prioritizing collective advancement over individual rights. This approach generated impressive economic statistics, but concentrated wealth among politically connected elites, often through no-bid government contracts and preferential access to business opportunities. Politically, Mahathir consolidated power through constitutional amendments, reducing judicial independence and strengthening executive authority. Critics faced harassment or imprisonment under the Internal Security Act, which allowed detention without trial. The media, increasingly controlled by government-linked companies, provided limited space for dissenting views. This authoritarian turn culminated in the 1908 judicial crisis, when Mahathir effectively dismantled the independence of Malaysia's judiciary after unfavorable court rulings. The Lord President and several Supreme Court judges were removed, permanently weakening a crucial check on executive power. Yet Mahathir's vision extended beyond economic development. He articulated a concept of Asian values that challenge Western liberal democracy as inappropriate for Malaysia's cultural context. His international prominence as a champion of developing nations and critic of Western policy made him a respected voice in global affairs, though his occasional anti-Semitic remarks generated controversy. The contradictions of Mahathir's Malaysia came to a head in 1998 when Deputy Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, once Mahathir's chosen successor, was abruptly dismissed, arrested, and ultimately imprisoned on corruption and sodomy charges widely viewed as politically motivated. This precipitated the Reformasi movement, the first major challenge to UMNO's political dominance since independence. Mahathir's retirement in 2003 initiated a period of political transition. His hand-picked successor Abdullah Ahmad Badawi initially promised greater openness and anti-corruption efforts, but failed to deliver meaningful reform. The 2008 general election saw the ruling Barisan Nasional coalition lose its two-thirds parliamentary majority for the first time since independence, signaling growing public discontent. Najib Razak, son of Malaysia's second prime minister, assumed leadership in 2009, promoting a One Malaysia concept emphasizing national unity. Economic liberalization and infrastructure development continued, but his administration became embroiled in what many consider Malaysia's worst corruption scandal. The One Malaysia Development Berhad affair, involving billions in misappropriated funds. As investigations into 1MDB intensified, Malaysia experienced its most dramatic political development since independence. The 2018 general election saw a coalition, led by 93-year-old Mahathir, now allied with his former nemesis Anwar Ibrahim, defeat Barisan Nasional, ending UMNO's uninterrupted 61-year rule. The new Pakatan Harapan government promised comprehensive reform, but struggled with internal contradictions and the complex legacy of decades of UMNO dominance. Mahathir's reluctance to hand power to Anwar, as promised, generated increasing tension. In February 2020, political maneuvering led to Pakatan Harapan's collapse. replaced by a new coalition including UMNO amid the emerging COVID-19 pandemic. Under Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin and later Ismail Sabri Yaakob, Malaysia faced unprecedented public health and economic challenges. The pandemic exposed vulnerabilities in Malaysia's economy and healthcare system while exacerbating existing inequalities. Political instability continued, with razor-thin parliamentary majorities and constant realignment of political loyalties. The November 2022 general election resulted in a hung parliament, with no coalition winning a clear majority. After days of negotiation, Anwar Ibrahim finally achieved his decades-long ambition, becoming Malaysia's 10th prime minister, leading a unity government comprising his Pakatan Harapan coalition, Barisan Nasional, and several smaller parties. Modern Malaysia presents a stunning contrast. Its skyline boasts architectural marvels like the Petronas Towers and Forest City, while rural areas maintain traditional kampung lifestyles. World-class manufacturing facilities produce advanced electronics, yet palm oil plantations, with their complex environmental implications, remain economic mainstays. Malaysian society has grown increasingly complex and diverse. Beyond the traditional Malay, Chinese, and Indian communities, millions of migrant workers from Indonesia, Bangladesh, and elsewhere contribute to the economy while facing significant social marginalization. Religious expression has become more conservative among many Malays, with Islamic identity increasingly central to political discourse. Economically, Malaysia faces the middle-income trap, having successfully escaped poverty but struggling to achieve high-income status. The government's 12th Malaysia Plan aims to address this challenge through digital transformation, sustainable development, and reducing dependency on foreign labor. Climate change poses particular threats to this tropical nation, from rising seas threatening coastal cities to changing weather patterns disrupting agriculture. Politically, Malaysia continues navigating the tension between communal interest and national identity. The question that has defined the nation since independence remains unresolved. Can Malaysia truly transcend its ethnic divisions to build an inclusive society where all citizens enjoy equal rights and opportunities while respecting cultural differences? Despite these challenges, Malaysia's fundamental strengths endure. Its strategic location at the heart of Southeast Asia, abundant natural resources, relatively well-educated population, and tradition of pragmatic governance position it favorably for continued development. The peaceful transition of power in 2018 and again in 2022 demonstrated the resilience of Malaysia's democratic institutions despite their flaws. From ancient jungle-dwelling peoples to sophisticated 21st century society, Malaysia's journey reflects humanity's perpetual challenge of forging unity from diversity. Its success or failure in the coming decades will provide valuable lessons for an increasingly interconnected world grappling with similar questions of identity, equity, and shared destiny in the face of unprecedented global challenges. Looking back across the sweep of Malaysian history, from the earliest human remains in Borneo's caves to the gleaming skyscrapers of modern, Kuala Lumpur one sees not just the story of a nation, but a microcosm of humanity's enduring struggle to balance tradition with progress, diversity with unity, and stability with justice. Malaysia's journey is far from over. Guided by its rich heritage and bold spirit, the nation stands ready to shape a future full of hope, unity, and progress. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I've also uploaded more videos related to history. Check them out.